So there I am, drenched in sweat, crouched under my tactical Jeep doing routine maintenance when I hear chains clanking. I slide out engine oil on my arms, only to see two clowns in fake tactical vests hooking my Jeep to a makeshift tow hitch. One's holding a clipboard that says HOA Enforcement Unit, the other's barking orders like he's in boot camp. They've got fake radios, fake badges, even fake sidearms. But here's the thing. I'm not some suburban dad. I'm a retired Navy SEAL, and what they just tried to steal is a federally registered tactical response vehicle loaded with counter-surveillance gear, and they're towing it with a bungee cord. These guys had no idea who they were messing with and what was coming for them. I was under the Jeep, tightening a loose bolt near the skid plate, sweat rolling down my temples, when I heard the distinct sound of gravel crunching, two sets of boots. Not hurried, not casual, intentional. I slid out from under the vehicle and blinked up at the sun, squinting to see two figures standing over me like they'd just stepped out of a low-budget action movie. Cargo pants. Matching black tactical vests. One had a pair of sunglasses straight out of a gas station display rack. The other was holding a clipboard like it was a warrant. My first thought? Maybe a prank. Maybe someone from the neighborhood pulling a stunt. Then I saw the badge. Not a real one. No medal, no official seal, just a laminated circle sticker slapped onto a patch of Velcro. It read in crooked, Comic Sans-like font, HOA Tactical Enforcement Unit. Below that, a barcode. No scan code, just a barcode. Probably decorative. My stomach sank. "You the owner of this vehicle?" the guy with the clipboard asked, tone sharp like he was rehearsing for a courtroom drama. "Yeah," I replied, slowly. Standing, wiping grease off my hands with a rag. "This here's an unauthorized military-grade threat to the safety of this residential zone. Per HOA Military Ordinance 17C, we're seizing it for immediate towing and deactivation." I laughed. Thought he was kidding. There is no military ordinance in the HOA charter. I helped draft parts of it when I moved in years ago. But before I could even process how ridiculous the sentence was, I heard a clink behind me. I turned just in time to see a tow strap, a frayed orange Home Depot tow strap, being latched to my front axle. The other guy was already walking back toward an old, rusted F-150 with a DIY winch mounted on the bumper. My Jeep, matte black and fully loaded with tech upgrades, started to shift. They were actually trying to tow it. "Whoa, hey!" I stepped forward. "Back away from the vehicle." "Sir!" Clipboard barked, holding up his laminated badge like it was Holy Writ. "Unless you're a licensed law enforcement agent, this vehicle classifies as a low-tier urban threat asset. You do not have clearance." "Clearance?" I repeated, stunned. "You're not cops. We are HOA certified tactical response officers." "No, you're not," I shot back. "There's no such thing. That badge looks like it was printed at Kinko's." He didn't flinch. "Sir, your refusal to comply is being documented. This vehicle has been reported by multiple residents as threatening, overly militarized, and psychologically disruptive to the suburban peace." Psychologically disruptive? I nearly laughed again, but rage was beginning to creep up my spine. "It's a Jeep. You're not authorized to touch it." The other guy gave the tow strap a hard pull. My front wheels jerked slightly. He called out, "We got axle contact. Pulling in 5. I stepped between them and the Jeep, palms up. "Touch that winch again, and I'll make sure you spend the night explaining this to the county sheriff." Sunglasses guy scoffed. "What are you gonna do, vet boy? Wave your VA card at us?" My jaw clenched, not because of the insult, but because they knew exactly what they were doing. My Jeep wasn't some vanity vehicle. It was a retired tactical response unit I rebuilt from the ground up after getting out, street legal, registered with the state. Used in volunteer disaster response drills and vet support parades. It carried real weight, and these clowns were dragging it like it was a junkyard shell. "You're committing theft," I said, voice low. "No, sir," Clipboard replied. are preventing escalation. This vehicle projects aggression. The HOA board has greenlit selective enforcement for non-compliant residents. What board? I snapped. There's no record of that in the charter. Special addendum, he said smugly. Emergency Neighborhood Security Clause, ratified last month. I stepped closer, inches from his face. I sit on that board. There was no such vote. He faltered for a moment, then looked past me and shouted, "Vehicle is now hostile. We're proceeding." The tow strap jerked again. The Jeep shifted 2 feet. My custom bumper scraped the concrete. Something inside me snapped. Not a yell, not a threat, just a shift. From passive disbelief to precise calculation. I took 1 step back and said, "You've got 5 seconds to unhook that strap before you find out what tactical training really looks like." They hesitated. Clipboard's hand twitched toward his fake sidearm, some kind of non-functioning holster prop, but the intention was enough. People had started watching from porches, recording with their phones. My neighbors knew me as the quiet guy with the cool Jeep. They didn't know I once cleared compounds in the dead of night with real threats on the other end. 4, I said. He raised the clipboard again. 3. The tow truck guy froze. 2. Clipboard cracked. "Stand down!" he yelled. "Let's just back it up! Unhook the damn thing!" The strap clanged loose. My Jeep settled back onto its tires. They backed off, but not far enough. They still had no idea what was about to come next. It wasn't just a Jeep. People saw matte black paint, oversized tires, and assumed it was some post-military flex. They didn't see the years that went into it. They didn't see the nights I sat in the garage with my hands shaking, using a torque wrench to stop thinking about sandstorms and IEDs. That vehicle was more than metal. It was therapy, it was structure, and it was mine. When I got out, I didn't know who I was without the uniform. You spend a decade living minute to minute, knowing every step in the field might be your last. And suddenly you're expected to decompress in suburbia like flipping a switch. But for me, it wasn't a switch. It was a slow grind, a dangerous one. The Jeep came into my life as scrap, half a chassis, rusted out, no doors, no hope. A buddy of mine from the base junked it and gave me first dibs. I didn't hesitate. I needed something to occupy the noise in my head. Rebuilding it gave me that. Every bolt was a breath. Every wiring harness was a moment of silence. It became routine, purpose. Over time, I added more than just parts. I installed a satellite comms unit, not because I needed it, but because I missed the feel of real connection, the kind that didn't come through small talk at barbecues. Reinforced undercarriage, thermal sensors, emergency EMT pack in the back seat, ballistic-rated windshield just in case. It wasn't paranoia. It was muscle memory. Preparation kept me alive in places these fake HOA cops couldn't pronounce. But this wasn't just a vanity build. I registered it legally. Cleared all local, state, and federal regulations. The VN was certified. DMV inspection passed. In fact, the state gave me an honorary vehicle classification, Civic Tactical Response Unit. It's been to veteran parades, disaster relief drills, PTSD awareness expos. Kids in wheelchairs took pictures inside it. I have a whole binder of documentation, laminated and notarized. So when these HOA wannabes called it unauthorized, they weren't just wrong. They were insulting every veteran who'd ever fought for their right to be that wrong. I went inside to grab the binder. Figured once they saw the paperwork, this whole charade would fold faster than their homemade badges. I had it all in a drawer near the kitchen. License, permits, letters of commendation from the sheriff's office. I even had a photo of the Jeep at a flood rescue mission, water up to its grill, pulling out stranded families. Took me 2 minutes to find it, maybe 3. When I came back out, the Jeep was moving. I stopped cold. The tow strap was taut, and my vehicle, my Jeep, was half dragged into the street like a wounded animal. My front axle groaned as the tires skidded sideways. The bumper scraped concrete like nails on a chalkboard. One of the tactical clowns had the audacity to wave at me like this was normal procedure. I lost it. "Unhook it!" I shouted, sprinting toward the driveway. Now! They didn't flinch. Clipboard guy was talking into a walkie-talkie, probably to someone in his basement with a headset and an inflated ego. The driver was gunning the winch motor like this was a video game. And my Jeep, my therapy, was being hauled away like it. Was an abandoned shopping cart. I ran up to the strap, dropped the binder, and began unhooking it myself. "Sir, step away from the vehicle!" Clipboard barked again, voice cracking. "You're committing a felony," I snapped, ripping the strap free. "This vehicle is protected under state law. You're looking at unlawful seizure, destruction of private property, and impersonation of law enforcement." He looked confused for a second. "We're HOA tactical," he muttered, like that meant anything. "You're two guys with stickers and delusions," I said. "You're lucky I haven't called in the sheriff yet." That's when it clicked. They didn't know. They had no idea who I was. They didn't know I was still in contact with state law enforcement. They didn't know I trained half the tactical team in this county. They didn't know I held a Class 3 security license that superseded anything their fake board could make up. They didn't know that the sheriff who co-signed my vehicle's certification was a personal friend and neighbor. But they were about to. I shoved the strap into Clipboard's chest. "You're going to fix my bumper. You're going to write a statement admitting what you did, and then you're going to leave this neighborhood before I decide to escalate this through official channels." He stared at me, blinking. The driver said, "We didn't know." "Exactly," I cut in. "You didn't know, and that's the problem." My Jeep sat lopsided, front left tire slightly tilted, axle likely torqued out of alignment. Months of work, dragged like garbage by two guys who thought they were above the law. I felt my chest tighten, not from anger, but from disbelief. How far were they willing to go in the name of an HOA fantasy? This wasn't just ignorance, it was arrogance. And they were about to find out what happens when you push a Navy SEAL who spent years following rules, only to watch civilians abuse them for power. The longer I stared at them, the more absurd the whole situation became. These guys weren't acting like officials. They were posturing, trying too hard, overcompensating for something, and suddenly something clicked. Real law enforcement doesn't yell over people. They don't stammer or fumble when you demand identification. They don't slap together homemade badges on Velcro and call it jurisdiction. No. These two were playing pretend. Badly. I took a step closer and asked, calm but firm, "Show me your credentials." Clipboard guy froze, glancing at his buddy like I'd just spoken a foreign language. The driver hesitated, then pulled out a laminated card from a chest pocket. I kid you not, it had "Authorized Tactical Liaison" typed across the top in bold Arial font, with a clip art logo of a house and stars on the bottom. No badge number, no official seal, just a name printed in Comic Sans, and a pixelated HOA emblem that looked like it had been pasted on in Microsoft Paint. "You're kidding," I muttered. "It's legit," he replied, voice high-pitched, defensive. "The board approved it." I pulled out my phone and dialed the HOA president directly. I'd met the man once at a community BBQ, seemed decent enough if a bit checked out. He picked up after 2 rings. I put him on speaker. "Hey, it's me. You aware of 2 men trying to tow a tactical Jeep from my driveway?" Silence for a beat, then, "Excuse me?" I glanced at the 2 rent-a-cops. "They say they're with an HOA enforcement division." "We don't have an enforcement division," the president said, now alarmed. "That would be illegal." Yeah, that's what I thought. The clipboard guy tried to interrupt, muttering something about special neighborhood safety protocol. I pointed at my phone. "He says you're lying." The HOA president asked, "Who are they?" "They claim to be neighbors. One lives on Maple Lane, I think. They're towing my vehicle, my state-certified tactical unit, off my own property." "Stop them immediately," he snapped, "and I'm calling the real cops." Clipboard. Guy's face turned pale. Driver guy looked like he wanted to melt into the ground, but they still didn't stop. In fact, clipboard guy doubled down. "You're interfering with a sanctioned operation," he barked, now pacing in front of the Jeep like a caricature of a drill sergeant. "You're resisting HOA law enforcement." Those words flipped a switch in me. There's a certain tone of voice people use when they've convinced themselves they're the hero of a story no one else believes in. That's what I heard in him. And I wasn't going to let him weaponize fantasy against me anymore. A few neighbors had wandered out by now, phones in hand, filming. One older woman whispered, "Is this real?" Another man muttered, "I thought they were just parking lot guys." But the crowd wasn't the problem. It was the fact that these two lunatics had now damaged private property and were doubling down on authority they didn't even have. I moved toward the Jeep again. The rear wheel was crooked from the botched drag. The bumper had deep gashes down to the primer. Grease was smeared across the hood from their dirty gloves. This wasn't just annoying anymore. It was criminal. I turned to the one holding the fake badge. "This vehicle is registered with the Sheriff's Department as a tactical response unit. I'm a decorated Navy SEAL, retired. You're impersonating law enforcement while vandalizing military-certified equipment." His mouth opened, then shut again. "That's felony territory," I added. Clipboard guy suddenly pulled out a walkie-talkie. "We've got non-compliance," he said into it, like someone was on the other end. It crackled once, then fell silent. I half expected someone's little brother to answer. That's when one of the bystanders, a middle-aged dad I'd seen jogging around the neighborhood before, stepped forward. "Y'all better leave," he said. "This ain't it. I'm a lawyer. You're not official anything." Clipboard guy turned to him like he was about to launch into some pre-rehearsed speech, but the tension shifted. He saw the crowd, he saw phones recording, and for the first time he saw he wasn't in control. Then came the sirens, short and sharp, 2 bursts. I didn't even have to look. I knew that sound. County cruiser, probably dispatched by the HOA president or maybe someone in the crowd. Either way, it was about to get real for the fake cops. Clipboard guy's hand hovered near the tow strap like he was trying to decide whether to finish the job or flee. Driver guy mumbled, "I told you this was stupid." I stood in front of my Jeep, unmoving. "Too late," I said. "You're going to explain this to real law enforcement now." And I wasn't going to lift a finger, because they had already written their own ending. In spray paint, scratched bumpers, and a whole lot of ego. They say real strength isn't about force, it's about control. And in that moment, with 2 imposters fumbling around like they were starring in a budget action movie, all I needed to do was stay calm and let their delusion unravel on its own. Clipboard guy made the first move. He lunged back toward the Jeep, trying to resecure the tow strap around the axle like if he could just finish the job fast enough, none of this would matter. He was frantic now, muttering something about compliance protocol and HOA orders. But his hands were shaking. The crowd was too much. The sirens were getting louder, and the eyes on him were no longer passive. They were hostile. I moved with purpose, stepping between him and the vehicle. "Back away," I said. He hesitated, chest puffed out like he wanted to act tough, but there was nothing behind it. He reached for his belt, where a cheap airsoft sidearm sat in a nylon holster. Not even a proper replica, just a plastic toy painted matte black. But that was all I needed to see. I moved faster than he could think. A twist of the wrist, a simple redirect, and the fake weapon was in my hand. I ejected the plastic magazine and dropped it at his feet. "This is what you brought. To impersonate law enforcement?" I said, holding it up so everyone could see. "You're lucky you didn't pull this in front of someone who doesn't ask questions first." He stumbled backward, pale and sweating. The other guy, driver dude, was already halfway to the street, trying to unhook the tow strap and make a quiet escape. But fate had other plans. As he turned, the strap looped around his ankle. One step and he was on the ground, flat on his back, groaning. Someone in the crowd laughed. Another person shouted, "This is unreal!" I pulled out my phone, turned on the camera, and started recording. Every second of this was going into the public record. The crowd followed suit. At least half a dozen neighbors were filming, whispering things like, "Wait, is that the SEAL guy from Maple?" and "This is gonna blow up online." Clipboard. Guy tried to plead. "Look, we didn't mean any harm. This was just supposed to be a neighborhood safety test, like a drill." "A drill?" I repeated, loud enough for the recording. "You impersonated law enforcement, damaged a vehicle that's registered with the sheriff's department, and attempted to tow it with a Home Depot strap. That's not a drill. That's a crime." "We thought you were a threat." "Driver," dude shouted from the ground. "Because I park a military-grade vehicle in my own driveway?" Someone in the crowd yelled, "This guy's a Navy SEAL!" And a few phones tilted higher, recording me like they'd just realized they were witnessing something bigger than HOA drama. Clipboard guy was stammering now. "We just wanted to make the neighborhood safer." "No," I said, still recording. "You wanted to play soldier. You put on a vest and a fake badge and thought that gave you power. But this isn't a game. You crossed a line. And now, the real consequences are showing up." Right on cue, 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled in with lights flashing but sirens off. The deputies stepped out with deliberate calm, taking in the crowd, the busted Jeep, the 2 wannabes who suddenly looked like they wished the earth would swallow them whole. I raised a hand and walked toward the deputies, phone still recording. "They're the ones," I said. "Impersonated officers, trespassed on private property, vandalized a tactical response vehicle, attempted an illegal tow, and carried a fake firearm, all while claiming HOA authority they never had." Clipboard guy tried to speak, but one of the deputies held up a hand. "We'll get your statement in a minute," he said, already slipping on gloves. "Hands where we can see them." Within moments, they were cuffed and seated on the curb. One of them had tears in his eyes. The other kept muttering that this was all a misunderstanding. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The deputy I'd spoken to turned to me and asked a few quick questions, then looked at the Jeep and whistled. "Did you rebuild this yourself?" he asked. "Every bolt," I replied. "Impressive. Glad you kept your cool. Could have gone sideways fast." "I've been in worse," I said. He nodded. "You'll get a case number soon. Mind if we use your footage for evidence?" I handed him a copy from my phone without hesitation. The crowd was still murmuring as the patrol cars pulled away with the fake cops in the back seats. I turned to face the neighbors, and for the first time, there was no suspicion. Just nods of respect. Not because I was a SEAL, but because I hadn't lifted a single finger, and I'd still shut them down cold. The patrol cars had barely left when a black SUV with government plates rolled in. Doors opened, and out stepped the sheriff himself. No deputies, no protocol, just the man in charge, boots crunching on the driveway gravel as he scanned the chaos. His eyes landed on me, then on the Jeep, and then the 2 clowns sitting cuffed on the curb like they'd just woken up from the worst role-play session of their lives. The sheriff and I had history. Not just through local channels, but from ops where real coordination, real tactical vehicles, and real discipline were required. He walked up with a slight smirk and gave me a quick nod. "Let me guess," he said. "This all started because someone thought the military vehicle in your driveway was a neighborhood threat." I pointed a thumb at the culprits. "They decided to take matters into their own hands, claimed HOA jurisdiction, and tried towing my truck with a strap from aisle 12 of a hardware store." His eyebrows raised. "Did they really? They had knockoff tactical vests, fake badge decals, even a toy pistol spray-painted black." The sheriff didn't laugh, but the way his jaw tightened said he was holding something back. He motioned to one of the deputies. "Check their IDs, run them through local and federal. Start cataloging every piece of equipment they brought, and bag that fake firearm." Clipboard guy, now looking thoroughly defeated, tried to play innocent. "We were just enforcing HOA policy. It's part of the community contract." The sheriff didn't even turn to face him. You mean the HOA that has no registered enforcement division, no contracts on file with the county, and whose president retired 2 years ago? Clipboard guy's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I've been waiting for this call, the sheriff said, turning back to me. You're not the first one they've harassed. We've been compiling reports from across the district. False. Violation notices, bogus fines, even attempted lockouts. But we needed something that stuck. Today, we've got it. He waved an arm, and 2 more deputies started unpacking the fake officer's truck. Inside were folders of forged notices, all printed with a homemade HOA letterhead. One of the deputies found an actual heat laminator in the back seat, used to make fake ID cards. Everything was laid out like a traveling scam kit. HOA tickets, fabricated citations, and even a neighborhood command manual, which looked like a Word document printed and bound at a copy center. The sheriff flipped through it, then held it up. This reads like a bad spy movie written by 2 bored teenagers. I shook my head. They thought the Jeep was government property. Well, they weren't wrong. It is. It's still listed as tactical reserve through our emergency response coordination unit. Had they towed it, they'd have been facing federal charges before they even left the street. He nodded, then turned to the curb. You 2 are under arrest for impersonating law enforcement, criminal mischief, vandalism, destruction of property, and attempted grand theft auto of a government vehicle. Driver Dude tried to protest. We were just trying to make the community safer. No, the sheriff snapped. You were trying to play God with a title you made up. You don't enforce laws. You don't make them, and you sure as hell don't drag someone's vehicle away with a ratchet strap and a cosplay vest. The cuffs stayed on. The deputies loaded their gear into evidence bags, took photos, and began processing the scene. Then, something beautiful happened. The sheriff motioned to his own emergency response unit parked just down the block. A heavy-duty rollback tow truck pulled forward. Official decals, licensed driver, government tags. The same kind of rig we used to recover gear in the field. With precision, the operator backed up to the Jeep, unhooked what was left of the tangled strap, and gently pulled it back into its original spot on my driveway. Not a scratch, not a ding. Like it had never been touched. Neighbors started clapping. A few even whistled. Not for a show, but for the moment, justice finally felt tangible. One older guy from 3 houses down stepped forward. Thank you, he said. These idiots fined me $400 last month for having a garden hose in view. I didn't even know they weren't real. Another woman added, they said I had to repaint my mailbox because it didn't match the aesthetic code they emailed out. I thought they were legit. The sheriff raised his voice just enough for the crowd to hear. If you've received any documents from this group, bring them to our office. We'll be clearing all fraudulent notices and opening a class action file. More applause, and for the first time in weeks the air felt clean, like the grip of fear and fake authority had finally snapped. I walked back to the Jeep, gave the hood a gentle pat, and looked over at the 2 men being loaded into separate cruisers. You messed with the wrong driveway, I muttered under my breath. Justice wasn't just served. It was delivered in full tactical fashion, quiet, sharp, and irreversible. The next day, a formal letter from the HOA landed in my mailbox. One of those stiff, bureaucratic pieces of paper that pretends to say a lot while actually saying nothing. According to them, the 2 men who attempted to tow my tactical vehicle had no official affiliation with the board and acted independently and without approval. It was damage control, plain and simple. They wanted distance, plausible deniability. But I wasn't buying it. I knew how these things worked. No random pair of neighborhood vigilantes just decide to impersonate law enforcement, invest in fake tactical gear, and roll up with forged documents unless someone gives them cover. Someone with power. Someone who thinks they're untouchable. So I started digging. With help from the sheriff's department, I gained access to the HOA's recent internal communications, the kind of emails they never expected to see daylight. What I found confirmed everything. A particular board member, Someone named Alan Griggs had been quietly pushing an enforcement initiative through unofficial channels. He didn't sign off on it formally, but he was the one who suggested community-led code reinforcement. He was the one who encouraged creative problem-solving with unauthorized vehicles. In one email, he even referred to my Jeep as an eyesore that sets the wrong tone for the neighborhood. I compiled everything, every message, every forged ticket, every witness statement. Then I brought it to the next HOA board meeting. But I didn't come alone. The sheriff was there, in uniform. So was my lawyer, an Air Force veteran who'd dealt with plenty of small-town politics before. And just for good measure, I brought my niece, the same one who cried watching them try to tow the Jeep. She sat quietly beside me holding the flash drive that contained the body cam footage from the sheriff's deputies and the full digital paper trail connecting Griggs to the fake enforcers. The room was packed. Residents had heard about the incident. They wanted answers. And I was ready to give them some. When they opened the floor to public comments, I stood up, plugged the flash drive into the projector, and pressed play. What followed was 10 minutes of absolute silence, except for the audio from the body cams, which clearly captured every shouted command, every false threat, and the precise moment those two idiots were arrested for impersonating law enforcement. Then I moved on to the emails. Projected, enlarged, highlighted. The damning phrases underlined for the board and the crowd to see. People gasped when they saw Griggs's name. One woman stood up and asked how long this had been going on. Another demanded he step down immediately. Griggs? He didn't say a word. He looked like a man watching the walls close in. The board president, red-faced and shaken, tried to salvage the meeting by suggesting they form a review committee. But the sheriff leaned in politely and said, "The review already happened. There will be charges." By the end of the night, Griggs resigned. So did two other board members who had co-signed those private enforcement proposals. A motion passed banning any non-government enforcement actions in the neighborhood. A resolution was adopted to re-establish transparent governance and mandatory background checks for any future board member. That night didn't just clean house. It reset the entire tone of the HOA. As for my vehicle, it didn't just survive, it became a local symbol. A week later, the sheriff returned with a small brass plaque engraved with Combat Veteran Response Unit, Service and Strength. We mounted it near the Jeep's front fender, and every time I take that thing out now, people wave. Kids salute. A few neighbors even asked for advice on how to start a real emergency readiness program instead of this cosplay garbage, the fake. HOA cops had peddled. I didn't go looking for a fight with my HOA. I just wanted peace and respect like any other homeowner. But when they sent fake enforcers to intimidate me, when they tried to mess with my military vehicle like it was some oversized lawn ornament, they crossed a line they never understood until it was too late. They thought I was just a guy with a truck. They didn't know I was a Navy SEAL, that I'd spent years coordinating real tactical responses, not neighborhood drama. That I knew how to spot weakness in command and how to bring it down, fast. In the end, they weren't just dealing with a resident. They were dealing with someone trained to respond under pressure, to identify threats, and to dismantle them, methodically. The lesson for this HOA? Don't try to play soldier, don't fake authority, and never, ever start a war you're not prepared to finish. If this story fired you up, hit that like button, because no one should have to fight fake authority just to live in peace. Subscribe for more jaw-dropping HOA showdowns and drop a comment if you've ever had to deal with a power-hungry board. Your voice matters, and your story could be next. Stick around. This channel isn't just telling stories. We're exposing every HOA power trip, one video at a time.